Hi, I'm Michelle Stirling for Friends of Science Society. Media pundits have had a field day mocking the Canadian Energy Centre, also known as the Alberta War Room, for daring to post a petition to Netflix, which demanded that the oil and gas industry be portrayed in a realistic light rather than the rapacious, evil, environment-wrecking villains of the extract oil companies shown in the kids' animated film Bigfoot Family. Bigfoot critters cooking with natural gas. In a March 28, 2021 story by CBC, Bigfoot director Ben Stassen of Belgium reported that thanks to the attention driven by the Canadian Energy Centre's petition, the film's viewership has spiked. In the CBC story, Stassen says a few revealing things. I know nothing about the oil industry. But I'm not that stupid to think that you extract oil by exploding a megaton bomb on the ground, Stassen said. Well, if so, why did Stassen put this into a kids' film? To misinform them? As noted in a recent interview that I did with journalist Andrew Lawton of True North, he pointed out that children do not have a broad worldview, and they accept things in the media at face value. Stassen goes on to tell CBC, "It's just entertainment. It has nothing to do with Alberta," he said. Why do they feel targeted by the film? That I do not know. Well, let me tell you why, Mr. Stassen. For the past 2 decades, the Alberta oil sands have been the target of a global smear attack called the Tar Sands Campaign, driven by foreign funding and various activist groups around the world. Most of the Tar Sands Campaign relies on exaggerated misinformation about the oil industry, spread by unaccountable, unelected environmental groups. Being nice, polite Canadians, for the longest time, we did little to challenge these groups, believing that people are entitled to their own opinions. But now, with over 100,000 Albertans out of work and investment driven off by intentional demarketing campaigns like those of Greenpeace and BankTrack, people want to fight anti-oil misinformation, no matter where it appears. Since Mr. Stassen admits to knowing nothing about the oil industry, perhaps Netflix should have better vetted the script and production. Bigfoot reinforces energy illiteracy. How does modern society operate? On oil, gas, and coal. In the film, from the get-go, a car drives by using gas. The raccoon cooks pancakes on a gas stove. Bigfoot flies in a gas-fueled plane to the remote Alaska location. The mom and son and critters drive to Alaska, and they even stop at an extract gas station for food and gas. They use cell phones, which are made from the product streams of oil, natural gas, and coal, and which operate on power that's generated by fossil fuel energy sources. And the film is streamed by Netflix, which consumes 15% of all bandwidth in the world, and that is provided by servers powered by oil, natural gas, and coal, which provide 84% of the world's energy, complemented by hydro and nuclear. The internet is said to account for 3.7% of global emissions. That's the same as aviation pre-COVID. So everything in the film relies on oil, the demonized substance of the film. So have a look at Netflix's statement on renewable energy. So let's look at the reality of world energy consumption. CBC reports that he, Stassen, added that he's proud of possibly raising awareness of how bad drilling can be for wildlife. Well, that's the only thing that I was hoping people would get out of the film. Well, in fact, the film shows nothing of the kind. It is ironic that this Netflix film was jointly financed by Belgian and French film funds, 2 countries that are net importers of oil, much of it from places that would be defined as despot nations, nations with no environmental regulations whatsoever. By contrast, Alaska, like Alberta, is an oil-rich region, but oil and gas developers in both places are subject to rigorous safety, socioeconomic, and environmental standards, contrary to what is shown in the film. If Ben Stassen thinks his film is saving wildlife, what does he say of his own country importing oil from places that have little regard for their people or the environment? Like Baku, Azerbaijan. Or have a look at the oil sands. This is how they look when they're reclaimed. So this is not the first time that Netflix has been petitioned about a film. In 2015, New Zealand required Netflix to remove a film classified as objectionable. The story was The Bridge, a film showing people committing suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. New Zealand has the highest youth suicide rate in the OECD, according to a 2017 UNICEF report. The film, The Bridge, took place in another country, but it obviously had a potentially detrimental effect on the people of New Zealand. Netflix complied. In fact, if anything, this is one reason why many Albertans would be outraged by Bigfoot, because thanks to the intentional demonization and economic destruction of Alberta's oil, gas, and oil sands industries wrought by the tar sands campaign, hundreds of Albertans have committed suicide due to the collapse of the industry. On February 6, 2015, the Financial Post reported that Canada had avoided being labeled as dirty oil by the EU Fuel Quality Directive, and thanks to that clarity, pipelines to access European and Asian markets were planned for construction. Optimistically, many Albertans started gearing up to serve the supply needs of the 4 major pipelines planned or approved at the time: Northern Gateway, twinning of Trans Mountain, Keystone XL, and Energy East. It seemed a no-brainer that at least one or more pipelines would be built. But by 2017, ENGO activists were crowing that they'd cost the oil sands industry $19 billion in delays in pipeline projects since 2011. And by 2018, all 4 major projects had been canceled, or in the case of Trans Mountain, work was suspended. Then the federal government bought the pipeline. The pipelines to access European and Asian markets were blocked by activist environmentalists and ENGOs, rather like the folks Ben Stassen shows in his film. So, Mr. Stassen, it's not just entertainment, especially when children are being told that oil companies are reckless corporations run by evil villains. But to my mind, the worst aspect of Bigfoot is the psychological training of children for eco-martyrdom. What we see in the film is that all Bigfoot needs for evidence to jump into the cause is a plea from 2 people in polar bear outfits. He jumps in with no expertise, but to find meaning in his own life and capitalize on his newfound celebrity and to do good. In the film, the environmentalists claim that because there's armed guards and a security fence, there must be something going on. In fact, most industrial facilities are fenced to keep the public out because it's dangerous on site, especially for the untrained public. So when Bigfoot arrives, he does not try any other method to assess whether or not the oil company is following regulations. In places like Alberta and Alaska, at environment ministries, there are binders full of compliance requirements and reporting, most of which are open to the public to review. Nope. Bigfoot accepts the word of the polar bear costumed activists, then unlawfully breaks into a high-security industrial area. When Bigfoot goes missing, his wife and son also take the law into their own hands. So, what message does this send to children? Ben Stassen says he does not know anything about the oil industry, so he probably does not know that in Canada we have had eco-warriors illegally hang from the Calgary Tower with a banner, causing the shutdown of the downtown core and putting lives at risk. In Alberta, we have had eco-warriors illegally break into secured facilities to chain themselves to dangerous equipment, where they created a serious risk to themselves and the public. We continue to have illegal nationwide disruptions by activists who blocked railways and roads last year for about 2 months because they disagreed about a ruling on a gas pipeline to the West Coast. And while Canadians have the legal charter right of peaceful assembly, riots or disturbance of the peace are not protected, nor do protesters have the right to physically impede or blockade lawful activities. This is a breach of rule of law that Bigfoot encourages, no matter how noble the cause in the fairy tale. And worse, in Canada, we continue to have eco-activists booby-trapping roads and rights of way where legally authorized oil, gas, and pipeline workers go to work. Yes, these activists are willing to maim or kill people for their ideology, the exact opposite of what is shown in the movie Bigfoot. So media pundits and opposition politicians in Alberta feel the petition is a waste of public funds, but it costs virtually nothing to post a petition. Activists do it all the time. Like those climate and eco-activists, the Canadian Energy Centre War Room got the public's attention, and this has stimulated a discussion about this film and its negative, misinformed representation of the industry that drives Canada's economy and the economies of thriving countries around the world. And that would seem to be a constructive outcome. The same parties have also mocked the Alberta inquiry into the foreign-funded tar sands campaign. But sadly, the movie Bigfoot reflects the kind of lone wolf eco-activist ideologue that Professor Barry Cooper discusses in his paper, commissioned by the inquiry. So, in my mind, that is the real problem with Bigfoot. It's a fact-free, cute, animated adventure for kids made by someone who admits he knows nothing about the oil industry that ends up prepping little minds for anti-oil hatred and eco-martyrdom. However, I'm not into cancel culture. I propose that as a counterpoint, Netflix provide its platform for the distribution of the Alberta film Global Warning, made by award-winning director Matthew Embry. It's a touching, informative, and nuanced film that addresses the gut-wrenching depths of despair that many Albertans are feeling. It shows the gutted downtown core of Calgary, once a beehive of activity, now a real estate ghost town. Global Warning addresses humanity's need for energy and the challenges of diverse, conflicting concerns about climate change, the environment, First Nations heritage, social and economic realities of resource development. And unlike Bigfoot, Global Warning embraces opposing views and tries to work them out through dialogue and understanding. And isn't that what we should be teaching kids? That, along with energy literacy, civics, and observance of rule of law. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Stirling. By the way, have a look at our reports on the tar sands campaign. Fear and Loathing, the Alberta oil sands from national pride to international pariah. Protest versus green trade war, rebutting environmental defense. Dirty Lies about oil sands crude, clearing the air on carbon intensity. When climate prophecy fails, the coming confrontation with reality. And When Giants Arise, the real world of GHG emissions and growth. Join us or donate. Help us spread the word.